Hello children. You know, at times we feel that our life is full of difficulties and perhaps we will never be happy ever again. But in such times also, to have patience and to always be hopeful for a better future helps us. This is what we will see in today's story, Cinderella. Once there was a gentleman who lived with his pretty daughter. His wife had died, so he married again. His new wife came with 2 daughters, who were not at all pretty and were better known as ugly sisters. These 2 sisters were very unkind to their new stepsister. Stepsister, Sauteli Behan. They ordered her day and night to do one thing or the other. Her clothes were old and torn now, but the gentleman never bothered about her. The poor girl was always tired and cold, so she often sat near the fireplace, almost in the cinders, to protect herself from cold. Cinders, जो हम छोटे छोटे वुड के पीसेस फायरप्लेस में आग लगाने के लिए यूज करते हैं, उन्हें सिंडर्स कहा जाता है. Cinderella, the elder ugly sister, jeered. This is a perfect name for you. क्योंकि वो हमेशा सिंडर्स के पास ही बैठी होती थी ताकि उसको थोड़ी गर्माहट मिले, इसलिए जो उसकी बड़ी वाली अगली सिस्टर थी उसने उसका मजाक उड़ाते हुए कहा कि तुम्हारा नाम सिंडरेला बिल्कुल सही है. So this is how the girl came to be known as Cinderella. One day, the prince of the country decided to marry. So he invited all pretty girls in the country to a ball. ये खेलने वाली बॉल नहीं है. कुछ ऐसी पार्टीज होती हैं जिनमें कि लोग डांस करते हैं. उन पार्टीज को कहा जाता है बॉल. So that he could choose one for his wife. When the invitation card arrived at Cinderella's house, the ugly sisters chose the finest dresses for themselves they could. And their mother was not far behind, for she too made a lot of preparations for the ball. I am sure the prince will fall in love with me, said the elder sister as she tried her new ball dress. Never imagine that, because I am the prettiest girl in the country, said the younger sister. और हम जानते हैं कि ये दोनों sisters ही कितनी ugly थीं. On the day of the ball, Cinderella had to work harder as she had to prepare the 2 sisters and their mother for the ball, who tried a number of fans, wigs, gloves and shoes. अब ड्रेसेस तो उन्होंने तैयार कर रखी थी अपनी. अब ड्रेसेस को एक्सेसराइज करने के लिए फैंस, विग्स, ग्लव्स, ये सब चीज़ें भी तो चाहिए थी. ये ट्राई उन्होंने बहुत सारी चीज़ें करी अपनी ड्रेसेस के साथ ताकि वो सबसे सुंदर लग सकें. At last, when the entire family left for the palace, Cinderella took a sigh of relief that at long last she could take some rest. But she was sad in her heart, for she too had a desire to go to the ball. After all, वो भी तो एक young लड़की थी, उसका भी मन करा कि वो भी इस ball party में जाए. A drop of tear fell from her beautiful eyes on the cinders. With it there was a flash. Amazed, Cinderella found that there was an elderly lady standing before her with a wand in her hand. Wand क्या है? जादू की छड़ी. Cinderella, I am your fairy godmother. Don't cry and tell me what perturbs you, said the fairy. Perturbs meaning तुम किस चीज से परेशान हो. I wish if I could go to the ball, said Cinderella. That you shall, said the fairy. Just go and fetch the largest pumpkin that is there in the house. Cinderella fetched one immediately, and the fairy touched it with her wand. In no time, it turned into a golden chariot. Then the fairy demanded for the mouse trap. Mouse trap क्या होता है? जिसमें हम चूहे पकड़ते हैं, वो चूहेदानी को mouse trap कहते हैं. There were 5 mice in it. She turned 4 of them into horses and 1 into the coachman. and then she touched 2 lizards on the wall and they turned into 2 footmen. Pumpkin से ये golden chariot बना. जो 5 चूहे थे उनमें से 4 में से ये 4 घोड़े बने और एक चूहे से footman बना जो कि वो chariot चलाता. Your coach is ready to take you to the royal palace, said the fairy. You can go now. Cinderella's eyes were full of tears. How could she go with her ragged, shabby dress? अब इतनी उसकी पुरानी घिसी हुई ड्रेस थी, उस ड्रेस में वो इतनी बड़ी पार्टी में कैसे जाती? The fairy immediately understood what she wanted, so she touched her with her wand, and with this, her dress changed into the finest dress that anybody had ever seen. On her feet, she was wearing the prettiest pair of glass shoes. As Cinderella stepped into the coach, the fairy told her, "Here is the warning. All this magic will vanish right at midnight, so you must return before that." हमें पता है ना midnight क्या होती है? रात के 12 बजे. So Cinderella nodded her head and left, waving to the fairy. At the palace, the prince came to know that a pretty lady had come in the most splendid coach, क्योंकि golden उसकी coach बनाई थी ना pumpkin से. He himself came to the gate to receive her. He fell in love with her at first sight. वो इतनी सुंदर, इतनी pretty लग रही थी कि उसको देखते ही प्रिंस को उससे प्यार हो गया. He wanted her to be his wife. As everybody stared at her amazing beauty, the prince and Cinderella danced all evening. No one knew who she was. The prince was so absorbed in her beauty that he forgot to ask her name or where she lived. The time flew past. Suddenly, Cinderella heard the first stroke of midnight. She remembered the fairy's caution, so she ran towards the gate. As she ran down the stairs, a glass shoe was left behind, but she continued to run. By the time she came out of the gate, the magic had completely vanished. Only the glass shoe on her foot had not vanished. She picked up the glass shoe and walked back home. She did not know whether to be happy or sad. The prince wanted to marry none other than Cinderella, but he never knew who she was and where she lived. He had found one of the glass shoes, so he proclaimed, "I shall marry the girl on whose foot this glass shoe will fit." Proclaimed, आदेश जारी करना. The prince's servants travelled across the country with the shoe and tried it on all the young girls, but it did not fit anyone. At long last, they came to Cinderella's house too. The elder ugly sister sat down to try it first. She tried to squeeze her foot through it but failed. So did the younger one. "Is there any other young girl in the house?" asked the prince's servant. At this, Cinderella came into the room. "She was not at the ball even," said the ugly sisters. "Still she must try," said the prince's servant. Cinderella sat down and put her foot into it. The glass shoes slipped on as if it had been made just for her. The ugly girls gasped in surprise when Cinderella took out the second shoe from her bag and put it on. Just then, the fairy appeared there. She touched Cinderella with her wand, and her dress turned into the finest dress that had ever been made. As Cinderella got into the royal coach, the ugly sisters begged her for forgiveness because they had misbehaved with her. Cinderella smiled to them and said, "You need not be afraid of anything." Cinderella was married to the prince at a fine royal wedding. With this, they lived happily to the end of their lives. तो हमने क्या देखा? कितना भी बुरा टाइम आए, हमें एक तो पेशेंस रखनी चाहिए है और हमेशा दिल में होप होनी चाहिए है. एंड सेकेंड थिंग, कोई हमारे साथ कितना भी बुरा क्यों ना करे, माफ़ कर देना अच्छा है. उसे अपने दिल पर कोई बोझ नहीं रहता।